This is an Eye on Annapolis bonus podcast.
Welcome to our Eye on Annapolis Election 2021 podcast series for the city of Annapolis. Just a few quick notes for you. We reached out to every candidate running for office in the city of Annapolis to ask for their participation. Some participated, some didn't respond, and others responded, and we just weren't able to find a common time to record. It should be noted that in those circumstances, the candidates were usually running unopposed. These are unedited, so the ums and the ahs and the coughs and everything else are all still in place. This is deliberate, so you can hear the candidate raw. All of the candidates were asked the same questions, to be fair, except for one, which was specific to that candidate. We started out with some wider-reaching city questions and then got into some more specific ward questions. Ballots should have hit your mailboxes already if you live in the city of Annapolis, and it is important to exercise your right to vote, so please make sure you do. It's also very critical that you cast a vote that is right for you. Not what your neighbor has said, not based on something you heard. Do your own research and vote for the best candidate for you. And we hope that these interviews will help you in that process. And I do need to thank all of the candidates that have decided to get into this mess we call politics. Win or lose, these folks all care for Annapolis and have a passion to serve, and I appreciate their willingness to do so. With that said, let's have a listen.
We are out here at the Market House, which is exciting because it's, this is actually going on a full mayoral term of it being fully open. So I think this is good, but it's a beautiful September day. Is it September or is it October?
We are September, yes, for one more day.
We're with Toews, who is the aldermanic candidate for Ward 8, which is the Eastport section. So we brought him across the bridge because they've got a nice table out here. So thank you very much for joining us this morning. And what we're doing is we're talking to all of the candidates, both aldermanic and mayoral, and just sort of getting their feel and getting to people to understand who they are and what they are as they come up on Election Day. Election Day is November 2nd, and the city is going to be sending out ballots to every registered voter probably the second to third week in October.
I believe they go out October 8.
Okay.
Or 9. I'm not sure which.
So there are a number of ways that you can vote. You can return that by mail. You do have to have it postmarked no later than the 2nd of November. You can drop it off in boxes that'll be around the city, or you can go old school and show up at a polling location, and I would say pull a lever, but you don't do that anymore. But you sort of color in the lines and send it through a scanner. But Rock, again, thank you for joining us. And I guess
thank you.
Just get into it. I want to talk a little bit about crime, because with a city this small, we can't. Percentages don't really tell the story. If we have one murder one year and then a murder the next year, we've had 100% increase in crime, and that's not very fair to.
Right.
Just to say that.
But
what are your thoughts on crime in the city, and how do you ensure constituents in Ward 8, which is the lower end of Eastport, I guess, that the ward is safe and that the police are doing an adequate job here?
That's obviously a question that's on everyone's mind, and I think as is kind of well known and being talked about during this campaign. Our police department isn't up to the staffing level that we're budgeted for. That's complicated to get to that point by the fact that we're in competition with other jurisdictions, most likely probably the county, which offers signing bonuses, which is something we probably need to match. So I think the first thing we need to focus on is getting our police fully staffed to what we're budgeted for. And in talking to, I've talked to the chief of police and the head of the housing authority, other things like that. With the idea of, focusing on trying to get officers that live in the community, I think that would help when we're doing that recruiting. Maybe even having officers tasked to be in specific, wards or specific neighborhoods, and ideally maybe encouraging that they would live there in housing that, for example, where HACA owns the property or manages the property, might even be able to offer that as part of the compensation package. And, just in terms of, there's sort of an air of I think it's related to the pandemic in a lot of ways. There's an air of a little bit of lawlessness, and it just comes from, the way things were relaxed during the pandemic. So I think we sort of need to get back to, just establishing more of a law and order kind of a feel, or, public safety sort of a feel. So, yeah.
Good. Well, I'll tell you, the other thing that, development and population and crowding and everything else is sort of in there. And we've all been there that, a car wrecks or a pole falls down on Forest Drive and apocalypse hits Annapolis. And, there's a huge quality of life that we have that gets lost when something like that happens. How do you figure, as an alderman representing Ward 8, you'll balance that whole, we do need development, we do need an influx of, tax revenues and
right.
commerce and everything else.
Right.
But we also have the quality of life that we need to deal with as far as people that are living here.
Right.
How do you balance that out?
Yeah, well, you put your finger on a big part of it, which is, there's an appetite for revenue in the city. And that, obviously, that puts pressure on to increase development, increase density, that kind of thing. So if we were perhaps a bit better about controlling our spending or watching the spending that we do, at least we would be able to kind of relieve some of that pressure to constantly be seeking these new avenues for revenue. In terms of traffic, parking, all that sort of thing that comes along with new development, I think we need to look at, studies that we've already done. There's a traffic and parking study for Eastport that's from 2016. There's a whole list of recommendations in it. I don't know that we've tried to act on any of those at this point. So we, as a city, we sort of have this habit of commissioning studies, a lot of times really, dedicated and concerned residents put a lot of time, volunteer effort into it, but then we sort of fail to follow through on those recommendations. So, I think we need more bike access, more bike uses, look at one-way streets, the configuration of we have one-way streets in Ward 8, but I think we need to look at the configuration of those. Parking on one side, another, not the other side, perhaps. And then just the whole issue of parking in general. It's a resource. It's a scarce resource, and currently it's sort of unmanaged in Eastport in any way, in any case. So we might look at a parking district, maybe. Just some things we need to talk about. But as I said, a lot of this stuff's been addressed in the parking study from 2016, which I think we should look at.
Well, I'll tell you, we are an expensive city to live in. We're not quite San Francisco, thank God, for small papers. Mm-hmm. And the city does offer an awful lot of services to their residents. Some people say that our workforce in the city is bloated. Others feel that we're probably half-staffed.
Right.
It's all out there. But do you feel that Annapolis, after we paying taxes on taxes, because city residents do pay taxes on top of what we pay to the county,
right.
But do you feel that Annapolis is a good value?
Well, I think the desire for people to move to Annapolis, which is great, it goes back to your prior question about the need for more development in a lot of places. Not so much whether I think it's a value or not. The market sort of shows that it's at least desirable, a value in that sense, I think. But that said, even if it is a value at this point, there's no reason to not examine and try to streamline our spending. It's just too often that's just the assumption as well. Let's see, let's find more avenues for revenue, and that's not that we shouldn't do that, but too often I think we forget to look at how we might be able to avoid duplication of services, or perhaps certain departments that could be merged, just things like that. So I think we should always, even though it is a value, I do believe it's a value, but I believe we should try to streamline it and make it even more of a value.
And the last one on the city thing is that there's been a lot of talk. I know John Hammond has mentioned it about merging services with the county. And obviously we need to make sure that the county's on board with it before we start merging services. But what are your thoughts on that? And have you figured any departments that may be mergeable? I know we've done elections.
Right. Well, again, it's something that we should look at. I think there would be an opportunity to merge transportation, perhaps. I'm probably less inclined to think that would work out merging the police or fire department. Those are the other two big ones that always come up when you talk about merging services with the county. But maybe we should look at, as a start, the transportation department. And then, but as you alluded to, and as I've said before, you sort of have to ask what's in it for the county and what's their motivation. So we'd have to come up with something that would be appealing to the county. Of course, you could just simply say as a city, we're not providing this service anymore, at which point the county would probably have to. So it's not that the city has no leverage, but it would be, part of the negotiation with the county and hopefully not come to that level of being that dramatic. But yeah, I think I would look probably first at the transportation and see if you could merge that.
I'm going to switch into the wards here. What really easy one, not an easy one to solve, but what's the most pressing issue facing Ward 8 right now?
I think immediately the most pressing issue probably public water access. I don't know if it's the most pressing, but it's it seems to be the one that's on most people's minds right now. With the recent sort of loss of what was believed to be public, the right to have public access through Wells Cove. And then the questions about SAYC, South Annapolis Yacht Center, putting up a fence, blocking what was a traditional access to the water there. And then even places like at the end of Bill Jones Alley, near where I live, which is an easement, is my understanding, but is currently not accessible because of trees that have been allowed to grow there from neighboring properties.
What can we do with it about it?
Well, I think we need to look at where we stand, in terms of legal easements or, what the rights are that the city, believes that it has in regard to these locations, and make sure we understand what those are, get those nailed down and in writing, so that we don't have the problems that we had at Wells Cove. And then going forward, just keep an eye on possible places to expand, because I think, we certainly need, for everyone who lives here, part of the reason people live in Annapolis is because of the water. It's a big part of it. So we should be looking for ways to expand just public access for, kayaks, canoes, paddle boards, fishing, all those sorts of things. So when properties change hands, be on the lookout for ways that you could, as a city, increase your stock of public access
Snag an
points.
easement or something like that if it's
right. Right. Or redevelop, change hands or property that's redeveloped. Look for opportunities there to increase.
Different aldermen communicate in different ways throughout the city. I know we've got some that are old school that pick up the phone and call me. Others are very good with email, stuff like it. How do you plan to communicate with your constituents once you're in office? And what's your preferred method of getting contact? And if you say TikTok, we're just done.
No TikTok. I barely know what that is. But I think email is effective for some people, but increasingly, and I know this from my own business, email is not always, there was a time when you could assume you sent someone an email that they got it and saw it. And that's certainly not the case at this point. But that's an effective tool, obviously, to be used. Texting, I think, would be, a possible way, and I'd, be interested in receiving people's texts. But as a small business owner with a shop right on Main Street downtown. It's not like people aren't going to know how to get hold of me or find me. So there's just in person, which is,
so you're not selling the store just because of the massive salary that an alderman.
Yeah, right. Yes, I think that would be the primary way. Probably email, or at least for me in terms of outgoing communication. But people would be more than welcome to stop by in person, contact me by phone. I'm easy to find.
And this is not specific to the current alderman that's representing the ward, but some wards feel or seem, I mean, there's such a bedroom community, and they're somewhat ignored. They're somewhat forgotten about the city, and there's more than one. Do you feel that Ward 8 is adequately, and I'll say, represented, respected, recognized within the city?
Ward 8 as a whole, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think within Ward 8, there are parts of Ward 8 that I don't think probably are currently represented very, very effectively. So I'll say that.
How would
but
you...
if you look at, the city council, wards 1 through 8, does Ward 8 have a voice? Yes, definitely. But the question being, is it all of Ward 8?
Fair enough. All right. This one's for you.
All right.
And we mentioned this before we actually started recording a little bit, but you ran for this office a while ago. It was, 12 years ago. What the hell have you been doing for the past 12 years? And why did we sit out 2 elections to come back?
Nothing at all, right? No. No, it's a fair question. So I have gone from when I talked to you 12 years ago. That's kind of when you started this operation, I think, if we mentioned. I have gone from a business that I started at home, pre-internet, kind of in my basement. Went from that to the internet with it, to a storefront on Main Street. I've been active in different boards and committees around the city, things like the board of the Charles Carroll House, the board of the Mitchell Gallery at St. John's College, Quaker Burial Ground, South County. I was also on the Historic Preservation Commission for the city. So I've had a lot of interactions and done a lot of things in the community in that way. Plus just having an open shop downtown, which I've had first on West Street for a couple of years, but that started in 2011. So for, I guess, that's a decade, right, of having a small business, being interested and involved in issues that come up with the city's, government situation, dealing with, things that small businesses need, perceptions about what small businesses need. So yeah, I've been active in the community in a variety of ways since 2009. I guess it was. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's just throw it out here that I just moved into Ward 8, and I keep seeing these signs around town that says Toews for alderman. And
you got it.
I sat there. I Googled alderman to find out what the hell that meant.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've got an election coming up, so why am I voting for Toews?
Why would you vote for me? Right. Well, I have a deep investment in the city, I think. I own a house that I've had for 30 years in Eastport, same house that I bought in 1991. So I'm invested in the community in that way. I have the business that I mentioned before that went from the basement to the internet to a brick and mortar storefront on Main Street. I deeply care about the town. I've met my wife here, raised 2 kids here that are in their 20s. I've been an active member of the community. I think that the city council would benefit from someone with the experience that I have. I'm not a politician. I don't have any aspirations to go further. I'm just concerned about the community itself and how we can come together and work collaboratively to solve a lot of the challenges that we have. And I think particularly to start with, just some basic things. I mean, it's, we're such a divided society in so many ways, but if you look around the town, you can see things that I think everyone could agree should be different than what they are, and a lot of them are kind of basic things. So let's see if we can address those. Let's get the garbage picked up. Let's get the sidewalks fixed. Let's make sure there's not graffiti accumulating on things. Those are just tangible, visible, measurable things that it seems like we should make sure we do. I have experience as a businessman. I've had, jobs ranging from public accounting, that's how I started, residential property management in Hollywood, retail manager. I was an early manager of the Barnes & Noble here in Annapolis, and that kind of, as you might suspect, led into my book-selling career. I even had a job where I was a mule driver in the backcountry of Idaho, which probably, oddly enough, is the job that would prepare me best for the city council. So I think sometimes you wake up at night and you're like, well, yeah, why am I doing this? Am I qualified to do this? And then I look back. I mean, I go up to the 30,000 foot level and I say, if you don't want a guy that's a small business owner that's lived here for 30 years, that's been active in the community on the city council, well, what do you want on the city council? I mean, that's the ideal person in my mind.
Fantastic. How do we find out more about you? You're on Facebook and
website. Yep, rocktaves.org. Facebook is Friends of Rock Taves.
And even though it's pronounced Taves, it is Toews.
That's correct, yes. If you're a hockey fan, it's like the hockey player Jonathan Toews.
Rock, thank you very much for your time today.
John, I really
Good luck. And for everybody that's listening, get out and vote, or get to the post office and vote, or get to a drop box and vote, or something or other like that. And you want to make sure that you check out Rock's website as well as his Facebook page, and we will make sure we put the links in the show notes as well when this is done. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
This has been a bonus podcast from Eye on Annapolis. Please visit us at eyeonannapolis.net. Follow us on Facebook at All Annapolis and on Twitter at Eye on Annapolis. And if you haven't subscribed to the Daily News Brief podcast, go for it. And all of your local news will be delivered to your phone, tablet, or smart device by 6 a.m. every Monday through Friday.